Good evening, and welcome to our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri, with our brother Alok. Namaste. We are continuing Book 2, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Canto 10, Kingdoms and Godheads of the Little Mind, and we are on page 256, just at the break, about halfway down, in the bright kingdoms of the rising sun.
I was just thinking that this is so symbolic that last week when we stopped, it was before the day of the light, 25th December.
Yes.
And soon thereafter, it's the day of the rising sun.
Wonderful.
And we will end New Year with leaving behind the little mind and starting into the greater mind. So it's
And happily,
Yeah.
Christmas night, we had Om Choir
okay. So that's
in
what-
Savitri Bhavan
Yes.
with candles held by everyone.
oh wow.
And this first will be again a Tuesday for Om Choir.
Oh,
So we begin the year with an Om Choir.
that's wonderful. So before we proceed, just to put things in perspective, we see that in the little mind there are these three steps. The physical mind, heavily dependent on the senses, the data of the senses, tied completely to the whatever data is provided by the senses, and it cannot go beyond it. And then we have the vital mind, which goes into imaginations, and Shubhendu speaks of it as the red wild ass, which is jumping from here and to there. But in the process, sometimes it pitches a fork and hits something true and real. And then we have the rational mind. So rational mind has a tendency to categorize things and classify them, to create some kind of an order. The problem is it creates a mental order which is very different from the divine order. Because mental order is based on a limited understanding, a limited data, a limited field of observation. So it has, all philosophies are born out of that, the need to create mental order. And one of them was, last time I think we were talking about justice. So mental justice is somebody has done bad outwardly and therefore must get punishment. When you speak of divine, Shubhendu, when he was asked, he said, do you expect us to intervene in personal quarrels of the sadhaks? And Mother went one step further. She says, it is not a place of justice, it is a place of grace. Now when you look at from the divine perspective, in fact, justice is that someone who is not open to love and therefore suffering inside and therefore is wicked and cruel, the divine would pour more and more love, which is very strange. In prayers and meditation, at one place, the mother says that, I am holding the earth for which one has a special affection because he is sick and very. So when we look at things from the divine point of view, he creates order by the power of love, which transfigures things and puts them in their place. And this mother explains beautifully in the agenda where she speaks of a super grace, which starts arranging, rearranging and reorganizing things according to a deeper divine vision. But to the human vision, it may be completely upsetting, because human vision likes things to happen in a certain way. So with everything else, we have an idea of mental order. So sometimes we explain God's deeds in the world and the presence of evil by putting it onto man, that your bad karma and good karma, which is nothing but mind's instinctive need to create order. But that's not how the divine operates, because if that was how he would operate, nobody would have any hope. So
there's no divine justice in that sense.
In that sense, there is something which Mother explains at one place, where she says it's like a recoil from nature if you go overboard and excessive in a particular direction. But even behind that, there is a grace which is operating.
Yes.
Because perhaps you have to go through a certain kind of consequences to understand that, maybe I am going far beyond, crossing a certain line. So that is how You remember when Sri Aurobindo was asked, why do you give such a long rope to your sadhaks? And he said the long rope is necessary. Superman cannot be created in any other way. So it's that's why when we step into the spiritual life, leaving behind the mental boundaries, step means actually step, not read about them. Then the measures of the human mind begin to fall apart, and it can be a very disorienting moment for the mind constructed world.
Yes.
And yet there is a reason why reason is allowed to intervene. So we'll see Sri Aurobindo described it as the kingdom of the rising sun. And Mother says, before you can go beyond reason, first be reasonable. Otherwise, the line can be very thin, that, you are asked to take everything as coming by the grace. And look at the issue. Now, very easily it can be turned into a superstitious cult. Anything that happens, whatever is happening, you have to just take it that, look, that's how sometimes dangerous cults can be born. Whereas on the other hand, it is also true that the mind cannot understand the divine things. So what is the place of reason? The place of reason is first to organize our own lower parts, the vital and the physical. Discipline, regularity, order, punctuality, arranging your life, planning it in a certain way, all this reason can do. But when it comes to understanding the divine ways, it has to open to a higher light and not fall into a blind belief or disbelief, because then it will be superstition. So you have to open to a greater light, and that's what he is going to reveal to us. And when we have become reasonable, then we become ready to go beyond it. Reason was the helper, reason is the bar. So,
and he speaks a lot of reason.
Yes. In the bright kingdoms of the rising sun, we are on page 256. In the bright kingdoms of the rising sun, all is a birth into a power of light. So, conceptualization. Now, how is conceptualization a power of light? If we go to the original supramental state, in supermind also there is something like a conceptualization, but here the concept is a reality. You have already grasped that. When Sri Aurobindo speaks of the three different powers of the supermind or gradations of supermind, you will see something of that is reflected even in our mental workings. Reason tries to go into the future and figure out. Reason tries to go into the past and understand it. So you have the apprehensive supermind, you have a comprehensive supermind. Mm-hmm. So all this, if we look at it, that it is they which get here and change into the human limited state, like imagination. Sri Aurobindo says imagination in human beings is actually the power of Maya, its human version. Therefore it is limited. But if you really look at it, imagination, the brain does not distinguish actually between imagination and reality. That's why when you watch a horror movie, it can have the same effect as actually watching a horrible being. Because brain does not create a division, it's that experience. So while we may say it is imagination, but well, for the body, for the rest of the parts, it is real. So something like the way Maya operates, she creates figures and symbols, but they are so real to all of us. So that's why he says, all is a birth into a power of light. So that's where we see the beginnings. All here deformed guards there its happy shape. But here it is deformed and limited. Here all is mixed and marred, there pure and whole. Even intuition, when it works in the human mind, takes the form of reason. Sri Aurobindo uses the word half digested. It looks like it is rational, but sometimes intuition can work and give a semblance of reason.
Yes.
It takes a cloth of reason. Yet each is a passing step, a moment's phase. Awake to a greater truth beyond her acts, the mediatrix sat and saw her works. So now reason becomes the mediatrix between the all that is below and that is beyond. In yoga, this reason is given a very special place, but the term used is buddhi. So, buddhi is the highest that the human mind can achieve in its normal, ordinary functioning. It is part of nature. It is not free. But it has the capacity to free the rest of the parts. That's why Gita itself starts with buddhi. And it says you can turn the buddhi outward and downward, or you can turn it inward and upward. So you can see how beautifully Sri Aurobindo is describing this movement. In Synthesis of Yoga, he says first you have to awaken this buddhi, meaning thereby buddhi is the one which tends to justify our actions. Oh, I got angry naturally because you have done this. But that's not the buddhi of a yogi. The buddhi will turn inside of a yogi and yoginist and see where is the problem within me which has made the other person angry. It's a completely different movement. And work in that and get free of that. Because it's a vyavsaitma buddhi. So he's describing of that state where everything is now beginning to look up towards the light. Because that's how the ascension will come. Maha. Yes, we can use that word, though it's used in different ways. The mediatrix sat and saw her works and felt the marvel in them and the force. So this is where the buddhi is looking outward. But look at the other movement. But knew the power behind the face of time. She did the task, obeyed the knowledge given. It knew that, this is what is given to me and within these limits I am working. Her deep heart yearned towards great ideal things. This is the movement which carries us from the little mind to the greater mind. That the deep heart yearns. So when reason becomes arrogant, ignorance is bad enough. But arrogant ignorance is disaster. An ignorance which knows that I am ignorant. Today somebody was saying that, I feel I am most unfit for the yoga. So the person calls me aside and shares this in deep agony. I said, that's wonderful. Now you are ready for the yoga. When you know your relative importance or unimportance in this vast cosmos, then you are ready. A door is opening. But if you feel I am fit, you are treading a dangerous edge. And if you believe you are fit and others are unfit, you are in the precipice. But when you feel you are not really fit, then you can make one of the two movements. One is the tamasic movement where you say, oh, I am unfit and fall down. Or you can make the movement, I am unfit, but your grace is infinite and your grace can make even a donkey speak.
But we see this very often. People feel they are totally unfit.
Yes.
This yoga is too vast.
Because human mind starts with an arrogance of knowledge. And one of the things that happens when it contacts the infinite touch, that it realizes its littleness.
Yes.
Its inability even to know the next step. It's a realization which comes because of the contact with the infinite. And that's why all true contact with the divine brings humility. If it's not bringing humility, one should be very careful. One may claim that I have experienced, I have seen vision and this and that. But true experience will bring humility. Humility because you get the experience of infinite. Something so vast and unknowable that how much ever you may know, always there is something which is before you and beyond you.
Yes.
So this state comes as a watershed state. After that, some will take on to this road that no, I am no good and let me remain where I am. Or the rare ones will open to the Lord and the infinite and the grace. So this is where we see that it turns towards great ideal things and from the light looked out to wider light. So see how beautifully Sri Aurobindo, that movement in the Gita, he describes that on one side it's looking outward, reason, and marveling at the works. Oh, I have done this, I have made this. Yeah. But deep inside it's yearning for something greater and wider. And it begins to turn. Look how he's describing. A brilliant hedge drawn round her narrowed her power. This illumination, this feeling of knowledge. We were talking the other day of excessive clarity, which is logical clarity, can sometimes become a bar towards something greater. So it's always good to keep a place for, I don't know it. So
and the hedge.
Brilliant hedge.
Sri Aurobindo spent so many years in England, and hedges are very, very, shall I say, popular
Oh,
in gardens all around India. Mazes and hedges.
yes.
And so hedges confine us.
They define your limits.
Absolutely.
They define your limits. So it's so amazing. Long back I remember someone I'm meeting in Delhi and he said, "Oh, I have read Sri Aurobindo, I have understood everything. Now we should go further." I said, "Dhanya." I said, "Pranam." And he had called himself Swatantra, independent. I had to boot it. I said, the only thing in my heart I thought, you need to be free of is from the arrogance of knowledge. All the other things are okay. The hedge of its own. You read Sri Aurobindo and you get an illusion that you know. Sometimes it can happen. You have read, some people feel, "Oh, I have read Savitri 20 times." Even if we can realize one line of it, it's something amazing,
Yes.
I think Anand Bhai's father, what was his name? Madhusudan.
Madhusudan
So
Reddy.
there is a account I have heard from someone that, he would teach the life divine, and once he was going someplace, but I remember the incidents where there was a man who was sitting, a very uncouth kind of a person who came to meet him and told him, "I believe you teach this book." He was carrying the life divine in his hand. "So I want to learn from you." So he looked at him and said, "How? I mean, it doesn't look like a kind of a person who can, really grasp the life divine." And he asked him that, "Why do you want to read this book?" So he said, "I don't know, but I was passing by a store and I saw a bookstall, and suddenly I was drawn to this book because all the time I could see lines, some blue light emanating from this book. So I want to know what this book is." So he said, "You need to now teach me rather than the other way around." Dr. Maheshwari had told me this story. And there is a similar story about the Gita, that someone wanted to read the Gita, and because he saw in every page this youthful man speaking something to this other fellow who is sitting there, he said, "But I can't understand a word." So you need to tell me what is there in the book. So you see this humility, which is important, then reason begins to soar up. Otherwise there is a hedge. And see, narrowed her power. There is a divine reason. And it can dawn upon us if we have the humility. Otherwise the powers become limited. Faithful to her limited sphere, she toiled, but knew its highest, widest seeing was a half search. Its mightiest acts, a passage or a stage. And this, I think, is the highest that reason can reach. Its highest word is agnosticism. I really don't know. Maybe there is something greater, but
Yes.
I don't have the instruments or the faculties to understand or know.
I would add gratitude to humility.
That's, yes. Gratitude is so rare in human nature. Mother says, if you find gratitude, you must bow down because it's so rare. This flower which she has named it.
Yes.
She speaks of it that in material life, it is the expression of the psychic
Yes.
in material life.
And interesting, the flower closes very quickly. It's open early in the day, and not so early, midday, and it closes by early
So
afternoon.
rare.
To bring a flower of gratitude to Mother was a special moment because she said, many people bring me flowers that are fresh when they pick them and they are fading when they come to me. Others can take a fading flower and bring it to me and it's fresh.
It's your inner state.
Yes.
For not by reason was creation made, and not by reason can the truth be seen, which through the veils of thought, the screens of sense, hardly the spirit's vision can descry. So that's why reason, because God did not think and plan, okay, I'll do it this way, that way, that way. That's not how creation has been made. It has been made by an intuitive seeing, which is all comprehending. All the steps are there, but not in a rational way, the way human reason would want to understand it. So that's why human reason finds so difficult to understand God's ways. Is a very famous pad by Surdas, he says, of course, he puts it back to karma, karman ki gati nyari. He says, I would put it, strange are the ways of the Lord. And it says, ujwal pankh diye bagule ko koyal ke hi vidikari. You have given such spotless white wings to this kingfisher who is crooked. And to koyal, who has such a sweet voice, you have made her all dark. So, and he says that Murak Raj karat hai. Pandit firat bhikari. The fools and the idiots are on the thrones of the world. And the knowledgeable ones, they are roaming like a beggar on the streets. So he says it's beyond comprehension what this world is. Because if you try to understand by reason, so he passes it on to karma, which is what ultimately, because nobody can question it. What happened 5 lives back is between you and the Lord. So it cannot understand the truth. Dimmed by the imperfection of its means, because the data is limited. Senses do not show many things which are going on behind. The little mind is tied to little things. Its sense is but the spirit's outward touch. Now this is interesting. Shobinda is not falsifying it. And it's the most outward touch of the spirit. Meaning thereby, actually through sense contact, you can arrive at the spiritual truth behind. And yogis do it. Sri Aurobindo would sometimes, or mother would ask for a photograph, and she would see a picture, and then she would go into the consciousness of the person, because it becomes a means to enter into the person's consciousness. Sometimes she would just let the person speak. It doesn't matter what the person is speaking. And the person thinks it's so important, but it's a means. Sri Ramakrishna would do this way that, he would sometimes ask the person to just sit and go into trance, and he would study the body and in the process enter into the consciousness. So he's not completely denying the necessity of senses. In gross matter, they have a function, but we should not stop there. We should not be glued to it. It's the first data. And through that data, you can, if you have the depth and the wideness inside, you can get into that state. And from there, it can again come back using the organ of speech.
Up until the early 1960s, you had to send mother a photograph and a sample of your handwriting.
For darshan,
Both.
even for school admission, the photographs were required.
Yes.
For a child to be admitted in the school.
Yes.
It was a means of contact
Yes.
in gross matter. Its sense is but the spirit's outward touch. Half waked in a world of dark inconscience, it feels out for its beings and its forms, like one left fumbling in the ignorant night. So it's like somebody grasps something in complete darkness and says, oh, this is probably a table, or this is probably a rope, but actually it's a snake, like that famous story we read about it. And still this illusion was necessary to receive the divine touch. So, even some illusions are used by the divine, even ignorance is used by the divine for his incalculable purposes. In this small mold of infant mind and sense, desire is a child heart's cry, crying for bliss. Our reason only a toy's artificer, a rule maker in a strange stumbling game. And that's what reason has been so far doing. Instead of trying to explore higher things, it is creating toys. So when we were small, we, having a scooter was a big thing in the village. Now having a car, you have BMW. It's just you have changed the toys. Children play with small toys. Now we have big toys, more expensive toys. So reason is used for making toys for the desire's cry for bliss. Now this is how he describes this, and it makes rules. Rules means how the material energies work, how the life force works, what you should do, let's say to enjoy life. So it builds certain rules, and all of them at some point go tumbling down. But it believes that it knows all about the world, its structure, its patterns. But she her dwarf aids knew, whose confident sight a bounded prospect took for the far goal. So it knows, however, that look, any true use of reason, even human reason, tells you that don't just blindly trust whatever the senses are telling you. And in, let's say, in my practice of psychiatry, what I have learned over years, one of the things, don't take one person's one-sided view of things. And it's not about being good or bad. It's not about being judgmental. But there are at least two sides, and in each person there are 3 or 4 sides. So there are multiple sides to anything that is happening. So the aids of reason are the senses. And very often we succumb to it. Oh, I heard this about so and so. That's why mother was so much keen not to have gossip, because gossip means straight playing into the hands of falsehood. We believe what we want to believe. If you don't like someone and you hear not very pleasant things, the first thing is, oh, is that so? And if you like the person and you hear it, you would say, it cannot be. You're telling a lie. And vice versa. So reason will tell us that don't just trust anything and everything that you are hearing or even seeing, because we don't know what's gone on behind and what's going on behind. But that's how reason operates ordinarily. But here it knows that it's a bounded prospect. And let's not look at it as the goal, even the toys we play with. The world she has made is an interim report of a traveller towards the half-found truth in things, moving twixt nescience and nescience. What a marvelous line it is.
Beautiful.
So what is reason doing? Moving from nescience to nescience. We may say from a greater nescience to a lesser nescience. if you can qualify nescience. But basically, it's not knowledge. It's a field of ignorance in which ignorantly we are wandering. We are only having an illusion of knowledge. Often when people talk about Gyan Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, so at one point of time, something which I had felt intuitively, which I can share, is that before you enter into Bhakti, Jnana and Karma, you should get rid of the illusion of knowledge, the illusion of works, and the illusion of Bhakti. Illusion of knowledge is, I have read the books, I have all the slokas in my head, therefore I am a knowledgeable person. Get rid of this illusion. You don't know anything till you have experienced the one.
And we don't know love until divine love.
Yes. Oh, I have so much love in my heart. I have bhakti for mother. 100 times you may go to the samadhi and bow. And yet true bhakti, which is willing to suffer 1,000 hells for 1,000 lives because you love your beloved. That is bhakti. What is bhakti if it doesn't translate into works? If you don't want to serve, then what kind of bhakti is it? The Lord is working in the dungeon and you want to remain in your cocoon and safe, then what kind of bhakti it is? But people have that illusion that by dancing and doing all this arti in a temple and they are bhaktas. So illusion of bhakti. And there is the illusion of work, that just because you are restlessly running from morning till evening, you are doing a lot of work for the mother. Great instrument. The mother can pick up even dust and turn it into the most beautiful diamonds because she is the mother. So these illusions, if you get rid of, then everything else opens. And now comes the master line, which reminds us of certain sayings. For nothing is known while aught remains concealed. The truth is known only when all is seen. This is what the definition of Brahman is. By knowing which all else is known. If you know Brahman, by that power, that light, wherever you turn and focus, the truth of that thing will begin to reveal itself. That is the sign of the knower of the Brahman. He may know nothing, may have read nothing, like Sri Ramakrishna. But he could know, he could catch the essential heart of things. So that is how Brahmans, by knowing which. So truth is that seeing which all else can be known. And there is another very nice pad from Guru Nanak, the mystic saint. He says, Eke sadhe sab sadhe sab sadhat ek na hoy. If you focus on the one and realize the one, you will understand the many. Sadhat is more than just understanding. You will know everything. You can attain everything. You can achieve everything. Sadhana literally means that. Sab sadhat ek na hoy. But you may know many things, but that does not mean you know the one thing. You may have read all the books and yet you won't know the one. But if you know the one, by that light you can understand everything. And all the great teachings will become spontaneously, they will appear in your heart. That is the eternal Veda, secret in the heart of every living creature.
And these two lines for me vibrate with the mantric force.
Oh, they are tremendously mantric. I'll read them again. For nothing is known while aught remains concealed. The truth is known only when all is seen. That's what Sri Aurobindo says. I want, in fact, there is a very nice passage in one of his early writings. It's from Essays Divine and Human, not one of the texts. You can search for it. What is it that I seek for, if not this? Because he says that the average Vedantin only touches the hem of God. And the average Bhakta dancing in ecstasy has hardly glimpsed the face. So he says, if I am not satisfied by these things, what is it that I seek? He says, I seek a light, and like that, there is a whole passage. Maybe if we get an opportunity, I'll bring it and read it. It's a powerful passage. It is there in the heart. It's there in the core. Attracted by the all that is the one, she yearns towards a higher light than hers. Hid by her cults and creeds, she has glimpsed God's face. So somewhere or the other, it is seeking for that light. And through these are the approaches it takes up. And through it somewhere touches. She knows she has but found a form, a robe. This was exactly what we were, talking about.
Yes.
Touching the helm of the transcendence robe. Somewhere through all these systems, philosophies, religions, cults, creed, somewhere it tries to get a glimpse. But then it knows I have not yet that ultimate, I have just touched the robe. But ever she hopes to see him in her heart and feel the body of his reality. So you cannot shut God into any formula, any system, any cult, creed, anything. They can become scaffoldings for some people. And Mother says in every religion there are some people who can discover the divine. But it's nothing to do with the religion, it's to do with them.
Yes.
Most will remain trapped.
Years ago, Aravinda Basu showed me the prayers of the heart of the Christian mystics. Pure bhakti.
Oh yes, I've read some of the prayers of St. Augustine and they are so psychic in nature.
Yes.
So, in every religion you will find people who are awakened to something deeper and higher. But it's nothing to do with the religion. It's something much greater because they have a yearning.
Yes.
And a time comes when quite naturally this pull of religion or this begins to go into the background and the spirit begins to appear. Even for Sri Ramakrishna, people used to say that he is doing things which are not prescribed by the religion. Even for Swami Vivekananda, people would write letters to the mutt that he has become a bhrast. He is going and staying with anybody, foreigners. And his letters, when you read letters from America, my God, he lashes out that you people think that you are someone very great. Come and see. Yeah, you must have read those letters from America. So they thought Swamiji has, lost it. But that's because he could go past, beyond. And that's the true spirit, of yoga, of spirituality, and what India has to show to the world, that truth lies in the heart and not something outside. So Hid by her cults and creeds, she has glimpsed God's face. She knows she has but found a form, a robe, but ever she hopes to see him in her heart and feel the body of his reality. As yet, a mask is there and not a brow. Look at these lines, a mask and not a
Yes.
brow. Who can be so perfectionist? You wear a mask, nobody ever paints a brow over it. Brow is the first sign that there is probably eyes waiting right below it. And look, he comes to that. Although sometimes two hidden eyes appear, reason cannot tear off that glimmering mask. Her efforts only make it glimmer more. Meaning, thereby you will feel, I have understood, I have illumined it. But you are still moving, doing the parikrama on the, buggy. But if you want to go and have the darshan, you have to step down, open your shoes and walk up to the shrine. No buggy can carry you. Otherwise, you just keep doing the parikrama and say, oh, this side there is this. Oh, this side there is this. But you are doing parikrama. Reason can do that. So it is making it more and more glimmer. So you know all about the outside. This experience in Sun Temple in Konark. There is once in a year, I think it's on Sankranti day or someday, when the light falls and it illumines. Otherwise you can see it, but you have missed that crucial moment. So for that crucial moment you have to go there at that point of time, then you have, that is illumination. All the rest is circling around. So it may look like every time you have gone you can describe it better, glimmer more, but it's still a glimmer. In packets she ties up the indivisible. So beautiful. All the distinctions of man and Shaivites and Vaishnavas. We have the Shakts and Vedantins.
And hundreds of religions.
Hundreds of religions. All these walls break down by the touch of the infinite. Before that majesty, glory of glories. Imagine somebody going, I remember reading one near-death experience of someone who goes and it's among those seemingly authentic experiences. So sees the being of light. And this being who is so-called died and yet has to come back, asks this being of light, by the way, which religion is the best? And the reply it gets it, frankly, I don't care. And it reminded me of one of Mother's experiences in Agenda, where each religion is showing her, giving her a dish. And she's seeing each of these religions like a small window through which you can see a patch of the sky, bits and parts. And you are describing the sky. From your patch it is cloudy, from another patch, you are seeing bright sky. And each is claiming to see the sky, and each is right, they are seeing the sky, but a patch. So each of them is giving some dish, and she says, I don't, it's okay, it's nothing great. So there is a man sitting in purple robe against a tree, and he is just taking his porridge, and he tells the mother, why don't you try this? So mother tries it, takes a spoon and says, this is delicious. Which is your path? And he says, I have no path. Very powerful. Beautiful. I have no path. The path is everywhere because divine is everywhere. I think we can close with 3-4 lines more.
Yes.
In packets she ties up the indivisible, finding her hands too small to hold vast truth. She breaks up knowledge into alien parts or peers through cloud rack for a vanished sun. This again, we are describing the same experience of the mother. She sees, not understanding what she has seen. Through the logged visages of finite things, the myriad aspects of infinity. One day, the face must burn out through the mask. So we must awaken the spiritual fire so that this face burns out through the mask. And then we can behold the infinity. All right, so we can stop here.